As the global economic landscape continues to evolve, tensions between the United States and China are once again escalating, threatening to reignite a trade war. With a looming deadline for new tariffs on $14 billion worth of American exports to China, analysts warn that failure to reach a diplomatic resolution could have significant repercussions for both economies. In a bold move last week, President Donald Trump announced an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods, citing the need for China to take more decisive action against the export of fentanyl, a potent opioid that has contributed to a growing public health crisis in the U.S. This announcement was swiftly followed by China's retaliatory measures, which included the imposition of 10 to 15% tariffs on U.S. energy exports and agricultural equipment. These tariffs are set to take effect imminently, raising concerns about the potential for escalating economic hostilities. This could be just the beginning of this phase of the trade war, warned Zhang Yenshin, an expert at the China Center for International Economic Exchanges. The urgency of the situation is underscored by Trump's recent remarks, indicating he is in no rush to negotiate further with China, framing the tariffs as an opening salvo with very substantial measures likely to follow. Despite initial expectations that U.S.-China talks might mitigate the brewing conflict, the rapid escalation of tariffs has complicated diplomatic efforts. A White House official confirmed that the U.S. is maintaining constant contact with Beijing, yet the response from China has been tepid, with no indication of meaningful negotiations underway. "China doesn't want a deal like that," noted Ma Wei from the Chinese government-affiliated Cass Institute of American Studies, emphasizing the need for equal dialogue rather than one party imposing conditions. The underlying issues driving this trade dispute extend beyond tariffs, with experts suggesting that Trump's tactics may have inadvertently stymied potential negotiations. Analysts have pointed out that Beijing is wary of U.S. demands that extend beyond fentanyl control, touching on geopolitical matters such as pressure regarding Russia and the ownership of TikTok. While Trump has indicated plans for reciprocal tariffs on other nations, the broader implications of these trade tensions are significant. Economists have warned that a sustained trade war could inflict serious harm on both economies, with Goldman Sachs estimating that each 20 percentage point increase in U.S. tariffs could dampen China's GDP growth by 0.7%. In the midst of these economic upheavals, global developments in technology continue to unfold, particularly in the realm of artificial intelligence. As the AI summit kicks off in Paris, over 5,000 experts and 80 world leaders are converging to discuss the future of this transformative technology. The summit aims to establish international protocols and promote investments in AI as nations scramble to maintain relevance in a field heavily dominated by the US and China. Despite the ambitious aspirations of the European Union to assert itself in AI governance, experts caution that Europe's efforts may be too little too late compared to the staggering $500 billion investment the US is funneling into its AI infrastructure. France's initiatives, including a new AI foundation for public interest, aim to direct funding toward ethical and sustainable AI practices, but the scale of investment pales in comparison to American efforts. Amid these geopolitical and economic shifts, the future remains uncertain. As the US and China grapple with their trade relationship, the outcomes could reshape not only their economies but also the global balance of power. Meanwhile, as Europe seeks to carve out its place in the tech landscape, the stakes are high for maintaining a competitive edge in an increasingly interconnected world. The coming months will likely be critical in determining whether diplomatic efforts can prevail over economic conflict and how nations will navigate the complexities of technological advancement in a rapidly changing global arena. As tensions escalate between the United States and China, analysts warn that both nations are on the precipice of a renewed trade war, with critical tariff deadlines looming. President Donald Trump has recently implemented a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, a move he justifies as a necessary response to China's alleged failure to combat the flow of fentanyl into the United States. This new wave of tariffs, set to impact $14 billion worth of American exports, has prompted immediate retaliatory actions from Beijing, raising concerns over the potential for a full-blown trade conflict. In the wake of Trump's announcement, China promptly declared additional tariffs ranging from 10% to 15% on U.S. energy exports and agricultural machinery. Industry experts such as Zhang Yanxian from the China Center for International Economic Exchanges have expressed alarm over the potential escalation of hostilities. This could be just the beginning of this phase of the trade war, he stated, emphasizing the precarious nature of the situation. The prospect of diplomatic talks to mitigate tensions appears increasingly dim. While Trump initially indicated a willingness to negotiate with Chinese President Xi Jinping, his tone shifted following China's retaliation, with the president stating he was in no rush and characterizing the tariffs as an opening salvo. A White House official claimed ongoing communication with Chinese counterparts, yet no substantial discussions have emerged as of late. China's response, while measured compared to its previous trade confrontations with the U.S., included plans to challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization (WTO) and implement unspecified countermeasures. Chinese officials have urged the U.S. to engage in constructive dialogue, with a foreign ministry spokesperson highlighting that fentanyl is America's problem and asserting that China has made significant efforts in anti-narcotics cooperation. The imposition of tariffs and subsequent retaliations have significant implications for both economies. Trump's tariffs are expected to raise costs for American consumers and businesses, particularly those reliant on Chinese imports. Industries such as technology, consumer goods, and agriculture are particularly vulnerable. According to Huishan, chief China economist at Goldman Sachs, a 20 percentage point increase in U.S. tariffs could reduce China's GDP growth by 0.7 percentage points, creating a ripple effect that could destabilize not only the Chinese economy but the global market as well. Moreover, China's strategic response includes enhancing trade relationships with other countries to mitigate reliance on the U.S. market. Initiatives such as deepening ties with BRICS nations and expanding partnerships within ASEAN are part of China's broader strategy to establish a diversified trading environment. This pivot could further diminish the economic leverage of the United States if tensions continue to escalate. The looming deadline for the new tariffs raises questions about the future direction of U.S.-China relations. Experts suggest that without active diplomatic engagement, the risk of a prolonged trade war remains high, which could lead to severe global economic repercussions. Wendy Cutler, a trade expert at the Asia Society Policy Institute, noted that unlike previous negotiations with Canada and Mexico, China is likely to adopt a more cautious wait-and-see approach. As both nations navigate these turbulent waters, the need for a balanced approach becomes increasingly apparent. Policymakers on both sides must weigh the immediate benefits of aggressive trade measures against the long-term consequences for their economies and global stability. The stakes are high and the potential for escalation is ever present, underscoring the critical need for diplomacy in resolving these complex trade disputes. Looking ahead, the outcome of this latest round of tariffs and responses could reshape not only U.S.-China relations but also the broader landscape of global trade. The world watches closely as the two largest economies grapple with their competing interests. And the success or failure of negotiations in the coming weeks will likely dictate the economic trajectory for years to come. The recent foreign aid freeze ordered by the White House under President Donald Trump has raised significant concerns in Taiwan, heightening fears of increased security risks amid ongoing tensions with China. Analysts warn that this decision could undermine Taiwan's defense capabilities at a time when Beijing is ramping up military pressure in the region. On January 24, the U.S. State Department issued a stop work order halting nearly all foreign assistance for 90 days. The freeze is part of a broader review of foreign policy alignment with Trump's administration, and it notably exempts only emergency food aid and military financing for Israel and Egypt, leaving key U.S. security partners like Taiwan and Ukraine in a precarious position. This has been particularly alarming for Taiwan, which has not received direct U.S. foreign aid since 1979 but has seen a rise in military support in recent years. Lin Yi-jun, a legislator from Taiwan's opposition party, the Taiwan People's Party (TPP), expressed the sentiment that any cuts in aid would further jeopardize Taiwan's international standing. Any aid cuts and the USAID shutdown would make Taiwan's international position even more precarious, he stated, highlighting the urgency of the situation. Historically, Taiwan's military support from the U.S. has surged, especially under the previous Biden administration. In 2023, the U.S. approved a landmark military aid package worth $345 million, followed by an additional $571 million in 2024. Congress also authorized up to $10 billion in interest-free loans for Taiwan extending until 2027. However, the recent aid freeze could force Taiwan's government to rethink its strategies towards both Washington and Beijing, as diminished U.S. support might embolden China to enhance its influence over Taiwan. Adding to the complexity of the situation, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and U.S. President Trump recently met to discuss their country's alliance in light of increasing Chinese military assertiveness regarding Taiwan. In a joint statement, both leaders condemned China's actions in the East and South China Seas and reiterated their commitment to maintaining peace across the Taiwan Strait. This marked a notable shift in discourse, as the inclusion of explicit opposition to unilateral changes to the status quo concerning Taiwan is rare in U.S.-Japan joint communications. The statement emphasized the importance of a free and open Indo-Pacific, with both leaders criticizing Beijing's attempts to alter regional dynamics through coercive means. Ishiba's commitment to bolstering Japan's defense capabilities, including doubling defense spending by 2027, aligns with the broader strategy aimed at countering Chinese assertiveness in the region. While Japan and the U.S. reaffirmed their security partnership, Taiwan's predicament remains precarious. The island must navigate its relationship with Washington carefully, especially in the wake of potential reductions in U.S. military support. The implications of these developments extend beyond Taiwan, affecting regional stability and the international community's approach to security in the Indo-Pacific. As tensions escalate, the future of Taiwan's defense strategy and its diplomatic relations with both the U.S. and China will become increasingly critical. Observers will be closely monitoring how Taiwan adapts to these challenges and what new dynamics emerge from the evolving geopolitical landscape in East Asia.